Colorado and Washington have essentially legalized marijuana for recreational use. Oregon, California, Rhode Island, Nevada, Vermont may be next. Could Iowa join that list? We'll address that on the Fallon Forum coming up.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
Hello, Mid-American Energy.
I'm very concerned that you want to bill me an extra $5,000 to build a nuclear reactor. Do you know we're in the middle of a recession?
Oh, we were hoping you wouldn't hear about that until after the legislature had taken action.
Why not let your shareholders pick up the tab?
Oh, way too risky for our shareholders. We need you, our loyal customers, to pay for it.
Wait, let me see if I understand this. Mid-American wants to build a nuclear power plant in 10 or 20 years, and they want me to pay for it now?
That's right.
Well, I'll just take my business elsewhere.
Sorry, we're a monopoly. What we say goes.
I've heard nuclear power is more expensive than other sources.
Yes, it is.
And I've heard there's no plan for how to dispose of nuclear waste.
We're looking at shooting it into the sun.
Well, I'm not going to sit back and let you make bad decisions with my money.
We're betting you will.
Stop Mid-American's power grab. Call your legislators today. 281-3371. 281-3371.
Paid for by Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And welcome to the Fallon Forum. It's Dr. Charles Goldman. I'm sitting in for Ed. As you know, Ed is on his Megabus tour, and he will be calling in at some point today. Supposedly, I think he's on his way to Atlanta today. So let's thank Brother Trucker, of course, for our opening music, and our sponsors, the Iowa chapter of the Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Sierra Club Iowa chapter. And also our sponsor of this segment, Gateway Market. And remember, if you want to be part of our conversation, call in at 515-244-0077 or the toll-free number, 855-244-0077. So today we're going to be talking about whether a reform of Iowa's somewhat draconian marijuana possession laws might be in the offing, and whether even medicalization might be in the offing in Iowa. And joining me today, I have two very animated guests and interested guests. The first is Josh Montgomery. Josh is the executive director of the Iowa State University chapter of the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws. He is a sophomore studying industrial engineering, a very serious task, obviously. And also with us is Thomas Neal, who is representing the Grinnell chapter of the Students Lobbying Against Prohibition. And obviously, we're not talking about alcohol prohibition. We're talking about marijuana prohibition. And Thomas is a junior in political science with a highly useful submajor of German policy studies.
Oh, no. Double major in German and then concentration in policy studies.
Okay.
Oh, I can see. That's a little...
I obviously misinterpreted the conversation.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with you, Thomas? Could you tell us a little bit about what the primary concerns of your organization are, both nationally and also in regards to Iowa and marijuana?
So, we think that we need a new paradigm for the drug war and for marijuana in particular these days, because criminalizing people who are possessing small amounts of marijuana is wasteful, it's expensive, and it ultimately prevents them from entering the economy and becoming meaningful citizens. It's really a waste of human potential. And I think that's what unifies our group around this issue.
Well, now, the opponents of marijuana legalization would say that marijuana is a waste of human potential because some of the arguments that are posited in the media are the research showing that people who are regular users of marijuana lose 7 to 8 IQ points. Yeah. I would suspect regular users of alcohol probably lose more. And this whole issue of motivation in people who are chronic users. So when you say it's a waste of human potential, obviously we're talking about another issue for you.
Yeah. Well, I think, we aren't dealing with marijuana as a substance like any other. We're dealing with it in sort of an exceptional domain, and by criminalizing people, the enforcement, the fact that we attach a criminal record to their lives, basically prevents them from entering. In many cases, they lose their financial aid. There are all kinds of things that can happen. So we don't really have to get into the debate as to whether marijuana is a good or bad substance. Many pharmaceutical products are, not necessarily great in abuse either. But the question is, what does that enforcement of those laws do? And I would argue that the crime really doesn't fit the punishment.
So, Josh, I know we talked a little bit about that too, about how the marijuana law enforcement preferentially involves certain racial groups in our society, and particularly in Iowa. Also, as Thomas was getting to, that by criminalizing our adolescents and our people in the young 20s, we're making it difficult, for instance, for them to get loans to educate themselves, which obviously has much more problematic long-term consequences than somebody who smokes dope on the weekends. I mean, what is normal in your group? What is your emphasis?
Well, in regards to the demographics that these laws focus on, it's becoming apparently clear that they're unjust in a sense that they don't focus on a wide variety of people. We see people of color being arrested much more frequently for these sorts of acts, and we see that many things in regards to students and things like that. The younger demographic is really being targeted, and it surprises them when they come into a situation like this, because most students coming into college, even if trying the substance for the first time, are very surprised when they hear the penalties, because as a student that chooses to make a decision in regards to what they consume and put into their body will suffer the repercussions regardless of whether or not they're punished by law enforcement. But the repercussions that they see from consuming such a substance are drastically imbalanced in regards to the punishments that they may see if they're caught with using such a substance. And that's really what we're focusing on. We see many specific cases of that, especially as students. We get to hear a lot of testimonials, and when those testimonials come to your attention, it's really hard to ignore.
Yeah. And I think I'd like to emphasize that even though today we have 2 college-age students talking about this issue, that there is increasingly widespread support among not just college-age students, who I know some of you may easily dismiss as saying, well, of course you want to decriminalize marijuana because college students are probably heavier users percentage-wise than other parts of the population.
And they are.
They are. But they're also heavier users of alcohol probably than any other part of the population. So here again, we end up with this kind of incongruity between these 2 drugs. But there are many adults who agree with this position. And, just to clarify, I mean, what we have now in the United States is that in the 1960s, as the war on drugs was started, much of it in response to the first maybe widespread awareness of a serial killing or a mass murder, which was the Manson murders in L.A., the war on drugs was begun. At that time, the decision was made to classify marijuana as a Schedule I drug, with the company of heroin and hallucinogens such as ecstasy and LSD, which is interesting because, as you've pointed out, that schedule of drugs supposedly has no medicinal purposes.
Right.
Yet LSD, in fact, was researched as a tool to aid, as was ecstasy, to aid psychiatric treatment of certain patients. So already it's a bizarre classification, but putting marijuana in with that schedule does seem extremely excessive. And what's happened since that time, of course, is that we're seeing 18 states that have medicalized marijuana, and now we have 2 states that have basically essentially legalized it, because what they've said is that they will, first of all, not prosecute for small amounts of possession, and that, in fact, Washington and Colorado, by their law, will have to set up an authority similar to their alcohol authorities to both tax and regulate this distribution of marijuana. So you're going to have a system that's going to look essentially like alcohol control in most states.
Right.
Now you have 7 other states which are considering somewhat similar changes. And Iowa, with this coming legislative session, we've been told that a Democratic senator and Democratic representative are going to introduce both a medical marijuana bill as well as a decriminalization bill. So maybe either one you can take this to start with. If you can clarify for the audience what these three things actually would mean: decriminalization versus medicalization versus total legalization.
Right.
So who wants to take that question?
Well, I guess first we want to start with mentioning that our organizations really want to focus on what Iowans believe is necessary for our political climate. And the trends that we're noticing is that Iowans fully support medicinal introduction into the medical field.
And that's you said about 75% level?
It's about 65%. 65% in full support of medicinal introduction.
And that's actually lower than, I think, generally in the United States, where it's over in the 70s that people...
I've even heard 80s.
Yeah.
Low 80s. Yeah.
Right. But, I mean, there's a vast difference between the three different measures. Decriminalization would change the punishments for small possession charges to the point where it would no longer be a serious misdemeanor that would warrant the removal of financial aid if convicted for
and
such a charge.
What is the present status in Iowa for first offense of possession?
It's 6 months in prison and $1,000, which according to some is the fourth strictest punishment in the United States.
And it leads to what percentage of the population in prisons in Iowa being related to simple possession of marijuana?
I think 300 people in Iowa are incarcerated due to marijuana, but there are 7,000 annual arrests. So it's a weighty problem. It's 70% of overall drug offenses are simply for marijuana possession.
In terms of people who are in prison in our state. Okay.
Absolutely.
And nationwide also the numbers are astronomical of people who are in prison being exposed to much more hardened criminals for recreational drug use.
Right. I mean, nationwide, the numbers speak for themselves. 50% of incarcerations are cannabis related. 50% of that's 50% of all jails across the country.
Okay, so decriminalization would obviously have the beneficial effect of depopulating our prisons for people who actually belong there. Also, basically getting a traffic-like ticket, an infraction for recreational drug use for what's basically a personal decision, which, oddly enough, this is a freedom issue. It's amazing that it's not seen that way. In the light of the tragedy at Sandy Point, we're hearing all about, well, this is the price of freedom. This is the price of the freedom of the Second Amendment, is that you're going to have this happen. And yet, marijuana decriminalization is clearly a freedom issue. And I'm surprised more people don't view it that way. So anyway, decriminalization would certainly help in terms of the prison population. It would keep people out of the criminal justice system who don't belong there, and it would also avoid this problem of criminalizing a group of people who are going to have a hard time getting loans for an education, which is what we're supposed to want to have happen for our youth. Okay, so that's one route. So medicalization, I think, is more obvious to most people, right? 18 states have done it, and what would that mean?
Well, here in Iowa, if we were to introduce it into the medicinal field, then a patient could approach their doctor if they were specifically interested in being treated using cannabis or offsets of cannabis. But so we would see the introduction of medical dispensaries in our state and things like that, and certainly it would be regulated similarly to other states, probably in our region that have taken other similar measures, such as Michigan.
Yeah.
But I mean, go ahead. You want to go ahead?
Yeah. So I think there are some conditions that we've identified where marijuana is clearly an asset in treatment, and so it would give doctors who now are forced into this really hazy gray zone of saying like, well, this might be helpful for you, but essentially encouraging their patients to do something illegal, when in reality it's perhaps a very useful and medicinal tool to help them deal with things like cancer and a variety of other diseases.
Yeah. What sort of things would you want people to realize that there have been, some reasonable studies showing drug-like activity, pharmaceutical drug-like activity, and what conditions in particular would people find it useful? I mean, we understand that to some degree getting a medical card in California and some of these places, people go in there and maybe some of the complaints they have are somewhat minor. And I think it's a reflection of physicians' attitudes about marijuana is they don't have that much problem with prescribing it when it's legally available.
Right.
So, I mean, what sort of conditions have we, shown some good evidence that they would be a useful pharmaceutical?
Well, it can be of assistance during chemotherapy. Multiple sclerosis has been, shown. a variety of sort of like terminal, really, really dangerous long-term diseases that in many cases leave the people sort of in extreme pain and unable to eat and unable to sleep and things like that. So the basic issue like that. But one of the things is we actually haven't seen sort of the extent it could be successful. There was an Israeli study of post-traumatic stress disorder that suggested it might have some potential there. So, part of the thing is we don't really know the extent to which it could be helpful, but it certainly can deal with pain and a variety of other factors.
And the thing is, I mean, the healing process very much has to do with what a patient believes is going to work for them. And when we see veterans asking for medicinal marijuana, it's hard to say no. We don't believe. I mean, it's hard to understand why our state government would be saying no. We aren't going to give you this medicine that you believe is going to work for your condition, such as post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I know just from personal experience, I get to hear a lot of veterans say, I really need this, and we really need to push for this because this is what's going to make me comfortable. I'm on antidepressants or pain suppressants that make me vomit daily, and marijuana simply wouldn't do that. And that's a reality we seriously need to take into consideration. If not for us, then for the others that are drastically affected by these laws.
Yeah, I mean, as a physician, I think that the standard marijuana is being held to is unreasonable.
Right.
Which is, let's take a group of drugs which is ubiquitously used in the United States. SSRIs, antidepressants, the Prozac family. 25% of the activity of that drug is placebo, as far as we can tell. That the mere fact that you believe the drug will work makes it work for you.
Right.
Another 40% of it is actual pharmacologic activity, and another 40% of patients, it doesn't help at all. And in a certain percentage of patients, it actually hurts because we know that the SSRIs cause suicidal ideation in young people. Yeah. That's a typical profile of a drug. So to say that because marijuana isn't better than Zofran for nausea in chemotherapy is disingenuous, because by the standard of other drugs that are FDA approved, that's a perfectly reasonable profile. If you're helping 60 to 70% of the people who are taking it, whether it's because they believe it works or because of the pharmacologic activity, that meets the standard of a whole slew of prescription drugs. In fact, that's better than a lot of prescription drugs.
Absolutely.
And so I agree with you. The argument is that there's been some constraint on research, but what research has been done shows that it fits the definition of a pharmaceutical as we understand it in the United States. And as a physician, you'll find that most physicians are fairly comfortable with the idea that it should be available.
I think that reflects what I've heard. And honestly, we have in this country over 20,000 deaths from opiate prescriptions, opiate painkiller prescriptions, according to the FDA. So, we tolerate as a society some consequences from our drugs, but we choose to regulate them and we choose to deal with them on honest terms. And I think that's really the paradigm we have to adopt for marijuana. I think our efforts are not necessarily pro-marijuana; they're sort of anti-drug laws. If I could be frank on this subject.
Yeah, and I think that to add on to some of the things that Thomas was talking about, there's certainly research showing it's active in inflammatory bowel disease, particularly a disease that's very difficult to treat, Crohn's. It's active in osteoarthritis, which your choices are going to be nonsteroidal drugs that may cause ulceration and bleeding, and people die from that bleeding, or pain medications, which you all know there's huge problems with abuse, dependence, and side effects. So clearly that'd be nice to add to the armamentarium. It's been shown to be helpful in things like epilepsy. Obviously, in the cancer realm, it increases appetite. I mean, it's ludicrous. I have patients. As a surgical oncologist, I take care of patients with terminal and advanced cancer. Their biggest problem is they want to be hungry.
Yeah.
And, all I can tell them to do is take Marinol, which is a pill form of some of the agents that you'll find that are active, THC and some of the other cannabinoids that are active in marijuana, but it doesn't work as well. We know that if you vaporize marijuana, if you smoke marijuana, you get more of the effects. And that's the whole point. I'm telling somebody not to take a drug that could help them.
Yeah.
So anyway, we will come back to some of the other issues, maybe talk about specifically the legalization issues and the politics around it in our next segment. I just want to remind you that Gateway Market, one of the sponsors of the show, is Des Moines' locally owned grocery store located at 20th and Woodland in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. It's a full-service grocery featuring a popular cafe serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And don't forget about Gateway Market's catering service, which especially would be helpful at this time of the year for those of you who are catering your parties. And if you've got a holiday party or event planned, large or small, check out the website at www.gatewaymarket.com. And that's Gateway Market. Good food, great community. So we're going to take a break here, and then we'll return to talk about the third issue with marijuana, which is full-scale legalization. How does it happen? Will it ever happen here? And where's the federal government going to sit with this? Because the state law and the federal law are clearly at odds right now, and it's interesting to see where this is going to go. So we'll return with the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions will give you a comprehensive energy audit that will cost you nothing. Tim will identify the many ways in which you can reduce energy use while saving money. Ed Fallon had Tim over for an audit last month and was amazed at how much energy was going through the roof, the doors, and the windows. So, before the cold winds of winter blow, give Tim a call at 515-802-2801. That's 515-802-2801.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
So welcome back to the Fallon Forum. This is a picture of Seattle, the day that marijuana became legal in Washington State. That's not the usual fog in Seattle. That's people smoking dope in Seattle.
Wow.
So welcome back into the Fallon Forum. The topic today is marijuana laws in Iowa. I'm Dr. Charles Goldman, substituting for Ed Fallon, who has called in and said he is back on the bus, and will be trying to join us a little bit later. Once again, Josh Montgomery from Iowa State and Thomas Neal from Grinnell joining me to discuss marijuana laws here and around the country. And we want to thank Reynolds Energy Solution for sponsoring this segment. And remember, if you want to call in, join the discussion, 244-0077 or 1-855-244-0077. So on the line, we have Johnny from Des Moines.
Hey, how you doing?
Great.
Hey, well, one thing, I think marijuana is going to be legal eventually everywhere. It's just a matter of time. But I think in Iowa, the biggest problem we have is we have a governor that appoints a guy to be his drug czar, a guy who really thinks that smoking a joint is equal to drinking a keg of beer. I've had conversations with Steve Lucan, just had one this morning, and the guy really believes that.
Well, let's see what Josh and Thomas have to say about that. And I'll also point out that the President Obama, has a DEA head who probably doesn't think much differently, is a holdover from the Bush administration, and is very inconsistent with many of the other people who are advising the administration about how they should approach the drug problem. So, Josh and Thomas, why don't we talk about our local drug czar?
Well, I mean, we know the problems of alcohol, and they're linked to over 3,000 type A offenses in the state, whereas all other drugs are linked to under 300, according to the latest 2009 FBI UCR report. Alcohol is a problem, so you have. I don't think you have any disagreement there. Marijuana, though, we can acknowledge that perhaps it's not the healthiest substance. It doesn't have perfect effects, but I don't think it's in the same league as alcohol. And I think empirical studies show that alcohol is addictive. Alcohol, is responsible for something like 80,000 deaths a year. So I hate to say it, but his statement just isn't backed by the medicine.
Thomas, and I want to let you continue in just a second, but let's point out that this that the head of, or the appointed position that the governor appointed, Steve Lukens, he was actually quoted stating that a joint is equivalent. Today's joint is equivalent to a keg of beer. And the last time I checked, if you consume an entire keg of beer yourself, it usually doesn't bode well for your health. And
you'll probably be dead.
Well, and obviously, the fact that you're inhaling a drug, you are able to control the dosing of a drug better that you inhale than when you drink, because the absorption of a liquid in ingested drugs such as alcohol is highly variable. So you can drink a lot over a period of time while you feel yourself sober and end up highly intoxicated. Whereas if you're vaporizing a drug, there's a very quick transfer to the brain, which means that you are quickly aware of how far along you are in terms of your intoxication. So it's just the opposite. Even though it's true that the marijuana today is more potent than that which was smoked in the 60s, you still self-regulate your dosing. And it's much more done much better with an inhaled drug than a liquid drug.
Right, and one thing too, in my conversation with Mr. Lucan, I pointed out to him that because he's like, well, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, having cocaine Schedule II, so basically the message that sends is that marijuana is more dangerous than cocaine. And Steve Lucan said, well, yeah, that's true. Cocaine has medicinal uses and marijuana has none.
Well, cocaine has a very limited medicinal use as a local anesthetic. That's essentially what it was created for. Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. But the decision to put marijuana on Schedule I was more political than scientific.
Right. But he thinks the drug czar of Iowa thinks it's scientific, and it's like when you've got a guy like this as our Iowa drug control policy guy, and a governor that appoints him, obviously a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. It's kind of it'll be a little longer road in Iowa than other states, but I think it'll get done. And one thing too, before I get off, is I was wondering if Josh had any more of those T-shirts left.
I asked for one too. No, Josh, would you tell them what happened with the T-shirts?
It's funny you should mention that, sir. And they made quite an impact on our campus. They're quite the hot item. But we're gonna have to move on from the original design. We're considering an Amsterdam, land of the free, line of clothing that we don't have to receive approval for creation of. But the first T-shirts received threats from Republican legislators. So I think the production has been ceased as of a couple weeks ago.
So Johnny, thank you for your call.
It's okay for them to put Psy on a shot glass.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Actually, great point.
Well, remember, alcohol is a legal drug. So.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Johnny. So.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Have a great day.
So, Thomas, did you have anything to say about is there an equivalent Grinnell T-shirt?
There isn't. I really want to save our efforts for the statewide group we're trying to get started. So Josh and I, people from across the state have been reaching out to us, and it's been really encouraging. Just people, veterans. We have people who are suffering, people who are paralyzed from the neck down. We have just a lot of people who are coming together who realize this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so if you want to keep your, give your money somewhere or buy a shirt, we hope that we're going to have some stuff going for that statewide coalition soon. And that, that's for me bigger than my campus. We don't need to sell this to college students. Like, they're basically sold on it. Democrats took notice during the past election. So.
Right. I think that the tide in terms of marijuana legalization, as in some other issues, social issues in the United States, is fairly clear. That we've gone from a bare majority of people believing that marijuana should be legalized, which we'll again get to what that would really mean, because it's beyond decriminalization and medicalization, to now it's probably approaching 60% nationwide. And of course, you're going to have pockets where that number is going to be flipped, but it's pretty clear that the tide of history, as Johnny says, is on the side of legalization eventually in the United States. It's a question of how it's going to happen. And so that is the question. Now, with legalization, you're talking about a structure that looks like alcohol in most states, which means you may have counties that will opt out, just like in alcohol. They don't want, have dry counties. You're going to have taxation. You're going to have distribution control, either indirectly through the state, through private distributors, or in some states, remember, alcohol is sold directly only at package stores that the state runs. So how do you all see that looking in the future? And I guess one of the biggest questions is, who's going to grow the marijuana for that distribution system?
Guess what? It's going to be Iowans. It's going to be small businesses. It's going to be jobs. Frankly, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be an economic boon. I don't know. There have been some really gaudy predictions. I don't know.
Well, certainly for people who make grow lights.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But we can't ignore the fact that this in a time where where the country's facing a fiscal cliff, was estimated by Jeffrey Myron, a Harvard economist, that drug tax revenue would represent something like over $45 billion nationally. I think that's can we afford to turn that away when we're cutting all kinds of budgets across the country? I just don't think so. I really don't.
How do you feel about that?
Couldn't agree more. And something that a lot of Iowans don't pay attention to is the fact that industrialized hemp is not allowed into the it's usually not even brought up in conversation. And the thing is, industrial hemp has so many uses that to ignore them in our country, especially with our fertile soil, is nothing but ignorance. It's completely separate from a controlled substance, from a drug. You do not consume industrialized hemp. You can make it into cloth. You can and with research we can reinstate hempenol, which was essentially what ran the Model T. And not a lot of people know that. In World War II, Iowan farms were actually it was enforced that they grow hemp for use in the war, and a lot of people don't know that. I mean, our state, Iowa, hosted a majority of the cultivation of hemp in our country in the 1950s and before the era of prohibition. And with the reintroduction of industrialized hemp, when the trend heads towards legalization, we'll see that again becomes reintroduced into what farmers are growing on their fields here in our state.
Yeah. So for those of you who, obviously Josh is very fervent about hemp. So we also know he's probably running the Woody Harrelson Film Festival up at ISU this weekend, since he's also a very ardent advocate of legalization of hemp, which I agree. I mean, again, its classification with marijuana is ludicrous. I mean, the point of the fact is 2/3 of the marijuana that comes into the United States is from Mexico.
Absolutely.
It's brought in as part of the cartel's activity down there. Now, we see horrific events in the United States that involve the death of 3 people, 20 people. It's on the news for weeks. Below the border with Mexico, 60,000 people have been killed in 5 years in a drug war between the cartels. Legalizing marijuana will clearly undercut the cartel ability to price marijuana, ability to sell marijuana in the United States. That alone should be a reason to rethink our idiotic, failed, expensive drug enforcement policies.
Absolutely.
And these are all sensible things. In Colorado, the original legalization effort in Colorado failed in 2006, I believe. I think it was the first time they tried to do it. And they changed strategy. The coalition that wanted to get it legalized changed strategy and said, we're never going to get huge numbers of people to say that they want to smoke dope. And they're not going to be able to say it with a straight face in the families with kids because it's such a terrible thing, But the strategy that was very cogent to people was, we're wasting money enforcing the drug laws. We're wasting money on prisons. We're losing tax revenue. And we're having police enforce a victimless crime when they could be doing work on serious crimes. And that resonated.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what, you were saying, Thomas, which is that's where you have to start thinking about politicizing this issue. And
right. Well, there's a shocking statistic for me, the 2007 FBI report. Again, I get all my numbers straight from the government. These are the Iowan reports. And in 2007, 25% of Iowa rapes were cleared. That means 75% went uncleared. And we arrested something like 7,000 people for marijuana that year. To me, that's just shocking. What are cops doing arresting kids, arresting people for small amounts of marijuana when we have, women whose assault is being unsolved? And there's a lot that goes into rape and to those problems. But the point is that crimes are going unsolved every day in the state, and we have to sort of set priorities with limited law enforcement and limited budgets. And it's clear, and I think there's widespread consensus across the state that marijuana is not a greater priority than rape.
Right. Now, the president has said that in an interview that aired on TV recently with Barbara Walters, or maybe it hasn't aired yet. I saw the excerpt that was already on the internet. That he's not going to have the federal agents going after individual users, but he's still uncertain about how he's going to deal with the discrepancy between federal law, which by Supreme Court decisions should supersede state law, which is that distribution by the states may not be legal under federal law. I mean, and setting up a taxing authority is de facto setting up a distributing organization. Yeah. So it's entirely possible that we're going to see a very prominent clash on this issue, even with a Democratic president in an office who admittedly in his biography said, I smoked marijuana when I was a kid too.
And a little blow. I'd like to add that. He said a little blow. So
now, I mean, you're in college. You see people who, as many adolescents and later adolescents do, dabble in various substance abuse. Not necessarily substance abuse, but they certainly dabble in substance use. I mean, what is your take on what happens to most people after they go through that period? I mean, do you find a lot of your compatriots debilitated by their use of marijuana?
I guess I can speak on behalf of that because I've been faced with a ton of different testimonies from former users and current users, and what we see is that former users of the drug they bring to the table a completely different perspective from somebody who hasn't tried it before. And the last thing that an organization like Thomas or I would want to do is spread the idea that people should start trying this drug to gain a knowledge of it, because that's absolutely not the case. All you need to do is pay attention to the information. But nonetheless, what we see is many of the professors on my campus, I know when I approach them on regarding these topics and how we should proceed and in the political climate in Iowa and things like that, will openly state that they've experimented with it and that they have firsthand knowledge of it, and they'll base their decisions around that, and stating that people will try this and that it's impossible to keep people from trying it. However, once they try it, they'll realize what it is, and can bring to the table a completely different perspective in regards to what the substance itself is.
Well, I mean, I'm going to harp back on alcohol, but I hate to say it, but on my campus, I'm actually a security guard. Weekend nights, I do security for parties. And let me tell you, the people we have problems with, it's usually related to alcohol. It's not related to marijuana. And so that's what concerns me. I think, we have to respect marijuana. We have to respect, there are clear psychological consequences that can emerge from it. We're not negating that, but we want to be honest about it. And I just don't think it's a gateway drug. I think it's a thing that, we're seeing in Vancouver. There's been a clinic that started using it actually as an exit drug trying to wean people off alcohol and other harder drugs.
Yeah, I think that'd be. Let's get back to that point about some of the arguments against any more sanction of marijuana in our society, because I think that's a great issue about the gateway drug issue, the issue of does it undercut the don't say no to drugs message we're supposed to be imparting. So we'll get back to that in our next segment. But before we end, I just want to remind you that Reynolds Energy Solutions, energy conservation starts with efficiency, and efficiency starts right in your home. Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions is your go-to guy for a full-scale energy audit. You'll absolutely be impressed with his knowledge, his professionalism, and his service. And what's this energy audit going to cost? Nothing. And Tim will tell you what you need to do to save money and make your home more energy efficient. So give Tim a shout today at 515-802-2801. Again, 515-802-2801. Or, of course, on the internet using your energy-efficient computer, reynolds.energysolutions@gmail.com. So we're going to take a break, and then we'll return to this issue of some of the arguments that are made against any more official sanction of marijuana as a reasonable choice as an intoxicant in our society.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait.
Howdy.
And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito online, fightingburrito.com. Join the fight. More than ever, average Americans are being squeezed by high energy prices. For decades, oil companies like British Petroleum have demanded access to the oil off America's coasts, and they even receive taxpayer subsidies. Yet increased drilling won't solve America's energy problem. It will only increase oil industry profits. The Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club supports clean energy solutions, energy efficiency, and conservation as the pathway that's best for America, both for our environment and our economy. For more information, go to iowa.sierraclub.org. That's iowa.sierraclub.org.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
This is Dr. Holding, the Story County Veterinary Clinic. For 15 years, we have been spaying and neutering feral cat groups at affordable prices. Wild cats destroy game birds and songbirds. A single female cat can produce over 4,000 kittens in 7 years. The shelters are full, so unwanted kittens will be put to sleep. Your cats will stay home and stay healthy. Call us for all your dog and cat needs at the Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30, 1 mile east of Interstate 35. 515-232-8766.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
So welcome back to the final segment of today's Fallon Forum. Dr. Charles Goldman sitting in for Ed Fallon. Ed is on the line, on the bus somewhere. And that, of course, is Pump Town, starting our third segment. We'd like to thank the Fighting Burrito that's sponsoring this segment of the program. And once again, if you'd like to get in the last minute call, give us a call, 515-244-0077. So we return again to our discussion about marijuana legalization in Iowa. But first, let's get with Ed, and we'll have to try to get him off really quick. Did you hear that, Ed?
Hey, Charles. You can't get the host of the show off. I get to drone on for as long as I want. No, you are in charge, man.
I understand.
Hey, I can't listen to the show, because the Wi-Fi on Megabus is not all it's cracked up to be, but I can see you, and I can see that you're not wearing your scrubs, so that's good.
I actually am. I just covered them up with something else.
You did rush out of the OR.
Well, I figured
laying back on a gurney there in the OR.
Yeah, I figured Mercy wouldn't be too happy that we're discussing marijuana legalization. Although I did suggest that as a method for them to pay off the bond on the new hospital.
But, there you go. Well, your guests are very young and very normal. Let me say.
Well, they are. They're very, very articulate too, which I guess you're not appreciating since you have no sound.
No, I have no sound. It's not working well. But the bus trip itself is pretty cool. They tend to pack these buses full.
Yeah.
It was crowded yesterday. Actually, I tried to get on a different bus last night to go to Atlanta. Packed. I couldn't get on even. So
where are you now?
Somewhere I'm almost into Georgia. We're just leaving Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, really? See, one of the things I love about driving from the Midwest to the South is as soon as you hit the border at some of these southern states, that's when the big billboards for the gentlemen's clubs start. So I love how fundamental religion is so big down there, but I've never seen so many billboards for strip joints as when you go, especially I think when I go into Georgia. I remember coming from Missouri when I lived there. So
I didn't notice them, but of course
just take a look out the window.
All right.
So
yeah, but it's been quite an experience. I mean, today's bus is a very diverse crowd. The second day, I was the only person I was the only person over 25 on the bus, I think.
Uh-huh.
The next day, I think it was the only white person on the bus, and we had a great time. I had a lot of good conversation. I saw the best behaved 6-year-old I've ever seen in my life. She was amazing. Guy next to me helped me with a phone problem. A lot of good fraternity. And today's bus driver, she's wonderful. Miss Johnson, her name is. Yesterday, I had a bus driver, though, that was obnoxious. He had his music so loud that I could not have been making this call right now.
Yeah.
But overall, the service is good. The passengers are wonderful. And I just wish the Wi-Fi would work better.
Yeah. So are they going to become a sponsor of the Fallon Forum?
I don't know. We'll have to find out.
So do you have any words of wisdom for us on how to change marijuana laws in Iowa?
Well, I think the bill being proposed at the state house, both the House and the Senate, is worth taking a look at. The challenge is going to be getting Republicans on board in the House. But gosh, with the libertarian bent that has become even more prominent in the Republican Party, compliments of Ron Paul, you would think there'd be some people there who'd want to co-sponsor that bill with Bruce Hunter.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, because it's just a freedom issue. It seems pretty clear cut.
Yeah, well, it saves money, too.
I mean, because Thomas, I think, was going to quote something from the Cato Institute, but I haven't asked him to quote that again.
Yeah.
We're not a huge fan of the Cato Institute on the Fallon Forum here. But
all over the place.
Uneasy bedfellows from time to time. No, it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
Although it is a natural coalition.
Yeah.
I mean, progressives and Tea Partiers and people who believe in freedom. I agree. This would be a natural coalition. Yeah. So, Ed, do you have any other things you'd like to add, or you just want to watch us finish the show up here?
Go ahead, finish it up. Have a great time. Thanks for
Okay, you have a great holiday. I'll see you when you get back.
All right. Take care.
Okay. So let's go back to what we sort of started to touch on, which is some of the things that oftentimes are put up to persons like yourselves who want to move forward on the status of marijuana. And one of the things that inevitably gets discussed is there an equivalency between alcohol and marijuana, and why is one treated differently than the other? And I'll just preface, very quickly that we've already done the prohibition experiment twice. We all know what the 20s looked like and the criminality of the 20s that led from the prohibition of alcohol. And the result of the prohibition of alcohol, which was a response to a huge problem. Alcohol was a huge problem in the United States, even more so than today, in terms of domestic violence, in terms of lack of productivity at work. It was ubiquitous that people were drinking alcohol, way more than marijuana is used in our present population. So prohibition was a response to a true societal problem. But prohibition obviously was a terrible response. But what came out of prohibition was that a regulation regimen that was rational, which was to keep limit the number of hours that alcohol could be sold, limit where it could be sold, keeping it away from minors, has been a reasonably effective mechanism to control the use of alcohol, which I agree with both of you is a much more dangerous drug than marijuana in terms of behavioral changes. That should be the lesson. We have a second prohibition lesson, which is the war on drugs. Dismal, expensive, freedom-robbing failure. Not just freedom in terms of the freedom to use the drug, but freedom in terms of the police powers people have been given to enforce drug laws and then have taken other people's freedoms away that have nothing to do with the possession of drugs.
Right.
So, again, I'd like to hear, what you'd like to say in that regard, but I don't see how it's not obvious to people that a regulatory mechanism would make more sense than a prohibition mechanism for this drug in particular. I mean, we're not standing here saying this is going to be Amsterdam. I don't think the United States is ready for legalized heroin, although you can even make public health arguments for that. But certainly marijuana is not a drug in that class, no matter what schedule it's on. So, Thomas, I know you have very strong feelings about alcohol in particular because of personal experience as to
absolutely
its dangers.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, I think I suffered a very traumatic experience due to alcohol. And honestly, it's a substance I've avoided because of that. I really think we have to sort of set priorities. And the problem is when you sort of when you cheapen alcohol, and when, at my school, for example, 75 to 80% of people use and abuse alcohol. Statistics show, what kind of people want to talk about their kids. What kind of message are we sending to our kids when we're sort of pushing them towards alcohol? It's not to say, again, not to negate any consequences from marijuana, but just to be sort of frank in the public health debate. I really think that we have to, set our priorities as a society.
I'd really like to comment on being frank and the comment that you mentioned about regulation versus prohibition. Education is something that we really need to introduce. Iowans need to realize that they need to tell that we need to start telling our kids what the reality of the situation is. The reality of the situation is you don't die if you smoke a joint, but you won't do as well on your next math test if you do it right before it. Mm-hmm. You need to realize, kids need to know that. Kids need to know what the difference between cocaine and marijuana is. And if the DEA, our federal government, is telling them that cocaine isn't as bad as marijuana, but they see the kid in the locker next to them using marijuana, then they aren't going to be. I mean, how could an adolescent be expected to know the difference between cocaine and marijuana if that's the case? We need to eliminate this ambiguity, and we need to make it clear that there is a current reality, that it's prevalent in our high schools, and that we can keep it out of our high schools by educating and regulating.
And it undermines faith in law enforcement and society. I think when people try it and they realize, well, maybe it's not as bad, then they lose faith in the entire regulatory structure. And that's a problem too, because we want to be getting credible signals from our government. We want to be getting credible messages from our government. So
absolutely. We want to look at our police officers as if they're heroes.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's talk about one of the other, canards that always comes around. And, it's usually summed up as, marijuana is a gateway drug. Now, I remember seeing a comedian here in the last year who said something I thought that was absolutely brilliant. He said, well, marijuana is a gateway drug. Alcohol is a destination drug. And I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I can tell you personally, I can tell you as a physician, we hate alcohol to a much greater degree than marijuana. The behavior that people come in the emergency rooms, the behavior the fact that people are in emergency rooms so often because of the activities of people who are drunk drivers, fights in bars, fights, at public gatherings, what they do to their families. It's horrendous. And it's hard for me to even see any equivalency between these two drugs. But how do you, when you go out in your education mode, try to explain to people that this is not really a true statement? This is a canard which really doesn't have a basis in fact.
Well, I think we have a successful paradigm, not a perfect paradigm, and that's tobacco. I really think, what we've done with tobacco is how many people get arrested for underage tobacco use? I don't really know, but we have seen tobacco use go down by half in the last 20, 30 years because there's been honest discussion and frank discussion of what the consequences are. So I really think I would get into the gateway debate, but I would say even if we believe it's a gateway drug, which I don't think there's any evidence that there is, it's clear that an honest approach from our society and an honest approach from public health would better that. And education, the tobacco paradigm is the right one to actually give people facts and to give people statistics. As Josh says, this is not going to help you with your math test tomorrow. So maybe it's time to talk about that more frankly than it is to.
Well, that raises another question, because what may help you with your math test is the Adderall that you've purloined or illicitly gotten from somebody who has a legitimate prescription.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole nother issue.
Oh yeah,
about the acceptability of pills, drugs, period.
OxyContin.
Yeah, in your, in various phases of your life to do certain things for you. And that's a society-wide problem.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, but Josh, how do you feel about the gateway issue when that's kind of thrown in your face?
Well, I mean, it's all I really like to revert back to the testimonials that I've been hearing as of late, because I get a testimonial or two a day from people who are concerned about what law enforcement is going to do to them and things like this. And I just have to mention that students want to keep themselves safe. They want to make the best decisions for themselves. They have a lot riding on their time in school. And to allow themselves to make decisions that will be detrimental is their number one priority in avoiding. And when they try marijuana, they're making a conscious decision to consume a substance. As far from a student's perspective, when they consume another hard drug, another illegal drug, they're making a conscious decision to do that. And the point that I'm trying to make is that they wouldn't be consuming marijuana at the levels that they did if they didn't think that they could go to class the next day. If they thought they could go to class the next day after doing LSD, then we would see a lot. I mean, we would be talking about a completely different scenario. But they don't. Students feel that it's safe. Patients feel that it's safe. And that's why it's so important that a reassessment be brought into the political system here in Iowa.
Well, I think the other thing is that the studies that are usually cited about the role of marijuana as a gateway drug also ignore that, first of all, it's rare that marijuana is the only drug or the only gateway drug that's being used by that person. The other gateway drugs are alcohol and cigarettes. Cigarettes is nothing more than a drug delivery system.
Yeah.
That's what it's engineered to be. It's an inhaled drug delivery system. Once again, pointing out the fact we talked about before, that inhalation of drugs, in many ways, is a very effective way to transfer it to where you want to, and at the same time to control dose. So it's not clear from what I've seen of the gateway studies that you can say that marijuana solely is the gateway. The other thing is that there's a fixed number of people presented with any ability to become addicted to something will become addicted.
Right.
It's a form of obsessive compulsive behavior. 15 to 20% of people presented with drugs will become addicted. So unless you're going to prohibit all drugs, this is not an effective regimen. So anyway, we could talk for much longer on this, but we're sort of getting near the end of our time. Josh, Thomas, I really appreciate your joining us. We'd certainly be very interested, to follow up with you, and if you are able to sort of get your coalition together to see where things go, to try to influence this legislative session to reassess Iowa's management of marijuana.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So
thank you for
thanks
having
again.
us. Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been
absolutely,
a pleasure.
it was a great time.
Well, thanks a lot. And before we leave, I just want to remind you that the Fighting Burrito is one of Des Moines' newest and most exciting restaurants, located in the Nationwide building at 13th and Locust here in downtown Des Moines. Specializes in, not surprisingly, custom burritos. They're affordable, tasty, entirely personalized. This is names. You have one of the names, don't you? A Fighting Burrito?
Fighting Burrito,
yeah,
absolutely.
They have one of the names. You can build your burrito from a wide variety of delicious options. Ed has had lunch there at least once, often twice a week. Trying to get some return, I guess, on his getting the advertising. He's never been disappointed, and sure you won't be either. So check out the Fighting Burrito just south of Locust on 13th Street in the Nationwide building and join the fight. So I'd like to thank Maddie Arrington, Webcast One Live, for hosting the program. Tomorrow we're going to have guest host Troy Church with David Shepard, pondering whatever happened to good old customer service. And following on, look for Bradshaw from 1 to 3. So thanks again. This is the Fallon Forum.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.